Have you ever woken up and just known someone was gone for good? Not because they slammed a door, not because they said goodbye, but because the silence spoke louder than any words ever could. Sterling didn't need a note, didn't need a call, didn't even need to check the front door. The cold side of the bed told him everything. She was gone, and the worst part, she'd waited until the moment he let his guard down, the moment he told her to stay, the moment he let love in. She left before sunrise, and for years he never understood why, until a photo, a child, and a name he hadn't spoken in 5 years changed everything. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where every story is drawn from the depths of human truth, heartache, and hope. If you're new here, you've just stepped into a channel where we tell powerful, American love stories filled with real lessons and unforgettable turns. Have you ever been left with no explanation? Do you believe silence sometimes says more than words ever could? Hit that like button if you're ready for a story that will move you. Drop a comment if this kind of pain feels familiar. And don't forget to subscribe, because stories like these remind us that healing, love, and answers always come. Even if years later, Sterling Manning sat on the edge of the bed, unmoving. The Chicago skyline behind him began to shift from black to gray, the soft hint of morning crawling between the blinds, but all he saw was the empty space beside him. The blanket was still dented where she had slept. Her scent lingered in the cotton. Warm jasmine, cheap hotel soap, and something familiar, something that felt like home. He reached out and touched the pillow. Still soft, still warm. He stared at the floor where her heels had been the night before. Now, only the faint imprint of one was left on the rug. She hadn't just walked out. She had erased herself. His hand clenched around the phone on the nightstand. He didn't have to open their last message. He had memorized it. Thank you for last night. Sleep well. That was it. No goodbye. No closure. Not even a question. He could still hear her voice, soft and hesitant. I'm not ready for forever, Sterling. But she had stayed that night. She had curled up in his arms and breathed into his chest like it was the safest place on earth. So, what changed? He moved through the penthouse like a ghost. Everything was too quiet. The hallway, the kitchen, the bathroom where her toothbrush still sat, unused. She hadn't taken anything but her shoes. Not the jacket he bought her when the wind got too sharp. Not the necklace she used to fidget with when nervous. Not even the book she'd left on the coffee table, the one she never finished. He poured himself a glass of water and didn't drink it. Instead, he opened his laptop and stared at the desktop wallpaper. A photo, blurry, low resolution. Alina laughing in a diner booth. Elbows on the table, hand halfway to her mouth, mid-laugh. Real. He hadn't taken that picture. Someone else did. He had begged them to send it. She never knew he kept it. Every time he looked at it, his chest tightened. Every time he tried to delete it, he couldn't. Sterling walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. It was still early. No movement outside. No honking cabs. No subway hum. Just cold air pressing against the glass. And the silence she left behind. She had left before sunrise. She had left without warning. But the ache she left in his chest, that stayed. The diner was half empty that night. A bell rang when the door opened and the cold air rushed in. Sterling stepped inside wearing a long black coat, his hair slightly wet from the snow. He looked out of place in a place like that. Sleek, tailored, and clearly too wealthy for vinyl booths and cracked menus. Alina didn't care. She poured his coffee without asking, her eyes a little tired, her hair tied back with a red elastic band. You look exhausted, she said casually, placing the mug in front of him. Sterling blinked. You look worse. Her brow shot up. He immediately winced. I mean, respectfully. She laughed. Nice save, boss man. He smirked. He came back the next night, and the night after that, he always ordered the same thing. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. She always poured without asking. He never asked for her number, never asked her out. But every night they talked. Sometimes it was about music, sometimes childhood, sometimes silence. She had a way of listening that made even his worst days feel seen. He hadn't realized how lonely he'd been until she sat across from him in that red booth and said nothing at all. One night, after her shift ended, he walked with her to the train station. No promises, no flirting, just quiet companionship. When she walked away, he stood at the platform for a few seconds longer, watching her disappear. The next morning, when she got to work, there was a folded napkin under the register. It read, "You deserve better hours and better coffee." She didn't smile. She didn't roll her eyes. She folded it neatly and kept it in her wallet. Sterling hadn't spoken her name aloud in months. Alina. It tasted bitter in his mouth now. Too many memories. Too many questions. Had she planned it? Had she used him? Had she ever truly loved him? Or had she loved him in the only way she knew how? Quietly, temporarily. Until the fear took over? He didn't know. All he knew was this: she had changed his life. And then disappeared from it like she was never there. He finally sat back down on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on his knees. The city had fully awakened now. Lights blinked on. Sirens echoed in the distance. A helicopter hummed above the buildings, but none of it filled the space she left behind. He picked up his phone again. No new messages, no calls, no explanation. Sterling didn't cry, didn't curse, didn't throw things. He simply whispered, "Why?" Not to her, not to the sky, just to the silence. The kind of silence only heartbreak leaves behind. He cancelled meetings, ignored emails, told his assistant to reroute all calls. For a man who ran one of the most aggressive tech investment firms in the country, silence from him set off alarms in every department. He didn't care. He sat on his couch with the lights off, laptop on his knees, cursor blinking on the same open file. Her photo. Alina, smiling, unfiltered, free. He clicked out of it, then reopened it 5 seconds later. It had been 3 days. 3 days since she disappeared without a trace. 3 days of no closure. 3 days of trying to understand how someone could go from touching your face like you were precious to walking away before the sun even came up. Sterling had dated other women before Alina. Models, founders, industry executives. But none of them ever made him laugh while pouring coffee at 3 a.m. None of them ever knew when he needed silence more than comfort. None of them ever felt real. Alina didn't care about his money, or his last name, or the articles that called him the ruthless tech mind behind Manning Solutions. She only cared about who he was when no one was looking. And now, she was gone. The memory kept replaying like a loop. Her hair falling over her shoulders in the dark, her voice low and shaky, saying, "And if I fail?" And his reply, soft, certain, immediate, "Then we fail together." That was the moment he let her all the way in. The first time he'd told a woman, "You can fall and I'll be there." The first time he allowed himself to believe he could build something personal that didn't collapse under pressure. And still, she left. Before he could wake up and ask what was next. Before he could tell her he meant every word. Before he could say, "Don't go." He hadn't realized he'd fallen asleep until the knock at his door startled him awake. He checked the time, 9:12 p.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. He stood, still groggy, and opened the door without checking the screen. It wasn't her. Of course it wasn't. It was Flynn, his COO, holding a tablet and 2 coffees. "I figured I'd find you here." Sterling didn't speak, just turned and walked back to the couch. Flynn followed him in. "Thought you'd be in the office today. Board's getting nervous." "Let them." Flynn dropped the tablet on the table. "You missed 2 investment calls, a quarterly review, and a dinner with the city council." Sterling looked at him. "And?" Flynn studied him a beat, then sat down across from him. "This isn't just about burnout, is it?" Sterling didn't reply. Flynn sighed, leaned forward and said, "She's the one who left, man, not you." Sterling's jaw tightened. "You don't know the story." I know enough to see it in your face." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind only two men who've been through something heavy can share. Finally, Flynn stood. "You want me to clear your schedule for the week?" Sterling shook his head. "No, I'll be in tomorrow." Flynn paused. "You sure?" He nodded once. Flynn handed him one of the coffees, then left without another word. Sterling didn't drink it. He just stared at the door, half hoping it would open again, that she would walk in, say it was all a mistake, say she needed time but regretted how she left. But the door stayed shut, and the room stayed cold. The next morning, Sterling shaved. He put on a grey suit, no tie. He walked into his office building like nothing happened, like the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with hadn't disappeared before he could even say so. Everyone noticed the tension. No one asked. Until Flynn slid into his office around noon. "You really want to do this?" he asked. "Pretend you're fine." Sterling didn't look up. "I am fine." "Okay," Flynn said slowly. "Then explain why you haven't changed your desktop background in 4 years. Sterling paused, then closed the laptop gently. "Because that's the last real thing I remember." Flynn nodded. "Then maybe it's time to stop pretending and go get answers." Sterling looked out the window. He didn't reply. That evening, Sterling drove to the diner. He hadn't been back since the night she left. The parking lot looked the same blinking red neon sign, same cracked pavement, same old man in the corner booth reading yesterday's paper. He walked in slowly. The new girl behind the counter looked up. "Table for one?" "No," he said. "I'm looking for someone." The girl smiled. "You mean Alina?" His throat tightened. "Yeah, she doesn't work here anymore. Left about 2 months ago." "Did she say where she was going?" The girl shook her head. "Nope. But she did ask me to hold on to this." She bent down and handed him a small sealed envelope with his name on it. Just Sterling. No return address. No explanation. He took it without saying a word, got back in his car, and just sat there, envelope in hand, staring at the ink. It was her handwriting. He didn't open it in the car. He waited until he was home, until the doors were locked, until the lights were off, until the weight of it felt unbearable. Then, finally, he tore the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Sterling, I don't know how to stay. I don't know how to be loved without giving everything away. I don't want to be rescued. I want to survive on my own. Because if I choose you before I choose me, I'll disappear inside your world. And I don't want to be a shadow in your life. Last night was real, but so is my fear. Please don't come looking for me. Alina." He read it 3 times, the first time in disbelief, the second in confusion, the third in quiet acceptance, and then he folded it neatly, placed it beside her toothbrush, and said nothing. Because what do you say when the only person you've ever trusted asks you to let her go? But he didn't delete her photo. He didn't throw out the necklace. He didn't erase the number. Because somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. People don't vanish without leaving pieces of themselves behind, and one day, those pieces would lead him back to her. The diner had no name worth remembering. Just 24-hour grill in faded red paint on the signboard above the door. The 2 was missing, so it just read 4-hour grill, and no one cared enough to fix it. It sat on North Clark Street, tucked between a laundromat and a payday loan office, the kind of place where stories quietly unfolded in the corners and no one asked questions after midnight. Alina Ward worked the night shift there 4 nights a week. On the other 3, she worked mornings at a daycare center across town. Sleep wasn't something she planned for. She'd gotten used to nodding off on the train, eating standing up, and learning to power through migraines with cold soda and ibuprofen from the corner store. But she was proud, because she had never once needed anyone to carry her. Alina's life had never been soft. Raised in the South Side with a mother who disappeared when she was 12 and a little. Sister she had to raise on her own. She didn't grow up with stories about fairy tales. She grew up with facts. Rent was due on the 1st. Groceries had to stretch. and no one was coming to save her. When her mother walked out, she didn't leave a note, just silence. That silence taught Alina how to survive. So, by the time she was 25, survival had become second nature. She first saw him during a storm. It was just after 2 a.m. The diner was nearly empty, except for a tired couple in the corner, arguing about bills and a delivery driver sipping soup in silence. He walked in like he didn't belong there, but needed to be. Long coat, dark eyes, expensive watch. He scanned the room like he expected someone to recognize him, but no one did. He sat at the counter. Alina poured him coffee. "You look exhausted," she said. He blinked. "You look worse." Then he paused, realizing what he said. "I mean that respectfully," he added quickly. Alina raised an eyebrow, smirked, and walked away. She didn't take offense. She'd been talked down to by men before, but not like that. His voice hadn't been cruel, just brutally honest. The next night he came back. Same time, same seat. He ordered nothing but coffee again. He didn't talk much, but he listened to the music, to the hum of the fridge, to the sound of her pen scratching receipts. He looked like a man who wanted to disappear but didn't know how. So she let him sit, and when she brought his refill, she said nothing. She only placed the cup gently and walked away. That night became a rhythm. He started leaving bigger tips than necessary. Once, it was a $100 bill folded under a sugar packet. She tried to give it back. He refused. "I'm not trying to impress you," he said. "I just know what long nights cost." She didn't thank him, didn't flirt, didn't give him anything he didn't earn, which made him come back again and again. They didn't exchange names until 2 weeks in, she finally asked, wiping down the counter. "So, do I call you Black Coffee forever?" He smiled. "Sterling." She nodded. "Alina." He repeated it softly, like it meant something already. One night, he stayed until the end of her shift. He didn't say why, just waited. She didn't ask him to, but when she slipped off her apron and grabbed her coat, he stood too. "You walking?" "Train," she said. "I'll join you." She hesitated. He saw that. "I won't talk," he added. "Promise." They walked in silence for 8 blocks. Not awkward silence, the kind that meant something. She never told him which train she took. He didn't ask. But when she looked back just before the turn, he was still standing at the corner. Watching, not waiting, just present. The next morning, she found a napkin tucked under the register drawer. Written in clean, steady handwriting, "You deserve better hours and better coffee." She didn't throw it away. She folded it, slipped it into her wallet, and didn't smile until she was 3 blocks away. That was the beginning, not of a fairy tale, but something quieter, something steadier, the kind of beginning where 2 tired souls find enough peace in each other's silence to come back again the next night. Alina didn't tell her co-workers about him, didn't mention him to her sister, who had just started college on the other side of the city. She kept him to herself, because something that quiet, something that steady, felt too fragile to name. One Saturday night she asked, "Why do you come here?" Sterling took a long sip of his coffee, then said, "Because you don't look at me like everyone else does." Alina tilted her head. "And how do they look at you? Like I have everything." She paused. "And you don't?" He looked away. "I don't even know what everything is." That night, for the first time, he didn't leave a tip. He left a book instead. Worn copy of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Inside the front cover, for when you're not working. If such a thing exists. She rolled her eyes when she saw it. But later that week, she read the first 10 pages on the train. And smiled. Alina knew better than to fall for a man who moved like the world bent for him. But Sterling was different. Not because he had money or power or mystery, but because he listened, because he saw her when she wasn't performing, when she was wiping ketchup off the floor, when she was too tired to smile, when she was just Alina. And he still came back. That was what made her nervous. Not his attention, but his consistency. Because Consistency came with expectations, and expectations could break you. One night, she was short on her rent. Her daycare paycheck had been delayed. The diner had been slow all week. She stood in front of the ATM, checking her balance twice. Still short. That night, Sterling showed up at 2:05 a.m. She had been crying in the back just before he arrived. She came out and poured his coffee without saying a word. He didn't ask what was wrong, but when he got up to leave, he slipped something into her coat pocket. She didn't notice until after her shift ended. It wasn't cash. It was a note. If it ever gets too heavy, call. No strings. S312-555-8420. She didn't call that night. She didn't call the next night either. But she kept the note. She never told him how much it meant. But he knew. Because the next time he walked in, she greeted him with more than a nod. She greeted him with something rare from her. A soft smile. And Sterling, he stayed an hour longer than usual. Because somewhere between silence and coffee refills, something had already begun. Sterling didn't take Alina out right away, not because he didn't want to, but because she made it clear from the beginning that she wasn't interested in being someone's project. So he waited. He kept coming to the diner, always tipping too much, and always leaving just before her shift ended. But one night, she was the one who sat across from him. "I get off in 20 minutes, she said. He raised an eyebrow. "You saying that because you're hungry, or because you're curious?" "Both," she replied. "Don't overthink it." He didn't. They walked to a late-night taco truck 3 blocks away and sat on a park bench, sipping canned soda and talking like they hadn't been strangers 2 months ago. She didn't wear makeup. He didn't wear the expensive watch. They didn't flirt. They didn't posture. They just talked. He told her about growing up in Michigan with a mother who prayed and a father who punched walls. She told him about learning to raise her sister with no blueprint, just instinct. They didn't compare scars. They simply showed them, not to impress each other, to understand. Sterling didn't kiss her that night. He didn't try to hold her hand. He waited. Because Alina had this energy, a quiet one, that made it clear she'd been through too much to be rushed. But when she looked at him and asked, "Why are you still here?" he answered without flinching. "Because no one's asking you to give up your life," he said. "Just let me be in it." Her throat tightened. She wasn't used to words like that, words without strings, so she nodded. And from that point on, he wasn't just a customer anymore. Their rhythm changed. He would meet her outside after her shift, walk her to the train station, and talk until the cars stopped honking and the wind softened. Sometimes, he'd drive her home. He never pushed to come in. She appreciated that more than he knew. Some nights, he left a thermos of coffee for her on the diner counter with a sticky note that said, "Sleep when you can," or "Tonight was heavy, breathe." She started writing back. "Coffee's too strong, but thanks. Don't wait outside if it's snowing again. You're annoying, but nice." Eventually, she smiled when she saw his notes before she saw him. Sterling didn't talk about his company much. He wasn't hiding it. He just didn't lead with it. Alina found out through a random customer at the diner. The woman asked, "Isn't that the Manning guy on Forbes?" Alina had blinked. "Manning?" The woman pointed at Sterling sitting in the booth, reading something on his tablet. Alina didn't ask him about it that night. She waited until they were walking home. "You never told me you were that Manning," she said casually. Sterling glanced over. Would it have changed anything? "Probably," she said, smirking. He laughed under his breath. "That's why I didn't say it." That honesty made her trust him more, not less. She had seen men use wealth to control, to impress, to dominate. But Sterling, he hid it, not because he was ashamed, but because he wanted her to see him first. That was rare. That was dangerous. 2 weeks later, he fixed her heater. The building had old pipes, and the manager hadn't answered her call. It was one of the coldest nights in January, and she was bundled under 3 blankets, trying not to shiver. Sterling showed up with a space heater, a toolbox, and Thai food. "Let me," he said when she opened the door. She tried to protest, but he cut her off. "I'm not here to save you, Alina. I'm here because I care. So she let him in. He replaced the filter, tightened a pipe, and tested the pilot light like he'd done it before. You do this often? She asked, arms crossed. Once, in college, nearly burned the place down. I got better, she chuckled. They ate on the floor by the heater. He didn't try anything. He didn't stay over. But that night, she kissed him first. Slow, grateful, terrified. He didn't ruin it with words. He kissed her back gently, then tucked her hair behind her ear, and said, "Go to sleep. You're safe." She blinked. That word, safe, wasn't something she associated with love. Until then, they didn't define the relationship, didn't use words like dating or exclusive, but Sterling stopped seeing anyone else, and Alina stopped pretending she wasn't waiting to see him again. He never judged her double shifts. She never questioned his late-night meetings. They moved in their own rhythm, messy, unclear, but real. One night, she asked him, "Do you think peace is a real thing, or just something people chase?" He looked at her for a long time, then answered, "I think peace is when you stop pretending." She nodded, but inside, she still wasn't sure she deserved it. Around that time, her sister moved out for college. Alina was proud, truly. But her apartment suddenly felt too quiet, too hollow. She hadn't lived alone in years. She had always had someone to take care of, to distract her, to justify staying guarded. Now, it was just her thoughts, her fears, and Sterling. And that terrified her, because if she let herself fall completely, who would catch her? And what if he wasn't there? One night, she fell asleep on his couch. He didn't wake her. He just covered her with a blanket, turned off the lights, and stayed awake beside her. She woke up in the middle of the night and found him sitting in the armchair, scrolling through something on his phone. "You couldn't sleep?" she whispered. He looked up, didn't want to. "Why?" He hesitated. Then, "Because when I sleep, I forget what this feels like." She blinked slowly. He meant it. He didn't just want her body. He wanted her presence, her peace, her story. She laid back down. But this time, she didn't close her eyes for a while, because maybe, just maybe, this was love. Have you ever met someone who didn't try to fix you, just stayed close until you felt safe enough to breathe? Do you know how rare that kind of love is? The quiet kind, the patient kind, the real kind. Alina didn't want to be saved. Sterling didn't want to control her. But somehow, they were saving each other, one small moment at a time. If you've ever experienced a love like that, or you're still hoping for it, tell us in the comments. We want to hear your story. Tap like if you believe love should feel safe. Hit subscribe if you're staying with us for the next chapter. Drop a comment if this reminded you of someone you'll never forget. Because sometimes, the love that changes everything doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with consistency. Alina never told Sterling she loved him, not because she didn't feel it, but because she wasn't sure what it meant anymore. Love, in her world, had always been followed by loss, by silence, by people walking out the door and never coming back. Her mother said, "I love you," the night before she disappeared. Her father never said it at all. So when Sterling looked at her like she was home, she didn't trust it. She trusted what came next, the leaving. Sterling didn't push. He never asked, "What are we?" Never demanded labels, never made her feel like she owed him a definition. Instead, he showed up. He learned how she took her coffee, how she hated loud chewing, how she never touched her food when she was anxious. He remembered the little things. And Alina? She noticed everything, especially the way he never asked her to change. But love, real love, isn't always gentle. Sometimes it presses into the parts of you that haven't healed yet. And Alina had more wounds than she ever admitted. The more she trusted him, the more scared she became. Because what if she gave in completely? What if she let herself believe this was real? And then he decided it was too much. The shift came quietly. Her smiles were a little shorter. Her laughter didn't linger. She started pulling away before the nights ended. Sterling noticed, but he didn't confront her. He simply adjusted, tried to hold her more loosely. He didn't want to break what they had by naming the fear too soon. One Friday night, after dinner at his place, Alina stood by the window looking out at the skyline. He walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You always stare out this window when you're overthinking," he whispered. She didn't respond right away. Then she said softly, "You ever feel like you're not supposed to have peace?" He pressed his chin to her shoulder. "All the time." She turned to face him. "I don't know how to rest, Sterling," she admitted. "It feels dangerous." He nodded. "I don't either. But I think we can learn." She blinked. "Together. If you want." She looked up at him, something breaking through in her eyes. "And if I fail?" He didn't hesitate. "Then we fail together." That night, they didn't speak much. He turned off the lights, left the candles unlit. No music, no distractions. Just skin against skin, minds against memories, hearts trying not to collapse under the weight of what they both feared. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for a few quiet hours, she let herself believe she was safe. By morning, she was gone. No sound, no call, no letter, just a bed still warm on one side, and a man who didn't understand how someone could hold you that close, only to vanish like it meant nothing. She didn't leave because of him. She left because of her. Because when you've never seen love last, you don't expect it to. Because when you've always been the one holding everyone else together, you don't know how to let someone hold you. Because when the trauma runs deeper than your confidence, you don't trust peace to stay. Sterling sat on the edge of the bed for a long time that morning. He didn't move, didn't panic, didn't chase. He just sat there, feeling the imprint she left behind, an imprint that would stay long after her scent faded. Flynn showed up again that afternoon. "Tell me what happened," he said. "No small talk." Sterling looked up. "She's gone." "Gone how?" He shrugged. Before sunrise, Flynn ran a hand down his face. "She leave a message? Anything?" Sterling shook his head. "She didn't steal anything," he added. "Didn't slam doors. Just left." Flynn exhaled hard. "Man, I've seen you blow through contracts, break boardroom deals, cut off billion-dollar partnerships without blinking. But this?" Sterling looked away. "This wasn't a deal." "No," Flynn said. "It was your chance to be human again." Sterling didn't respond. He picked up her toothbrush from the bathroom counter, stared at it for a while, then set it down again. She hadn't taken anything but her shoes. No goodbye, no closure, just silence. And Sterling didn't know how to fight silence, not this time. That week, he buried himself in work. 12-hour days, conference calls, boardroom presentations. He wore his sharpest suits, took control of every meeting, smiled at headlines that called him unshakable. But at night, when the lights were off, he stared at her picture on his desktop, the one where she was laughing, eyes closed, alive. And he whispered the same thing every night. "Why did you leave?" Not with anger, with ache. Alina didn't reach out. She didn't text, didn't send an email, didn't check if he was okay, but she thought about him. Every day, on her morning walks, on her subway rides, in the quiet corners of her new apartment. She'd left her job, moved to a different part of the city, started over, again. And each night, she placed her phone face down before bed, because if she looked, she'd want to call. And if she called, she wouldn't know how to explain the fear. The apartment Alina moved into was half the size of her last one. No skyline views, no memory-soaked furniture, just beige walls and a quiet that didn't ask questions. It was cheaper, farther, colder, but safe. At least, that's what she told herself. She found a new diner to work in, one where no one knew her name, where no one left $100 tips or asked about the circles under her eyes, where the coffee tasted worse, but the expectations were less. She clocked in, clocked out, slept less, and tried to forget the look on. Sterling's face when she turned away from him the night before she left. But every time she closed her eyes, she remembered. The way he had held her, like she was made of glass and not responsibility. The way his voice cracked when he whispered, "Then we fail together." That moment haunted her. Because in her world, failure meant being forgotten, meant being left to clean up alone, meant someone else would have to carry her weight, and she couldn't bear the thought of that. She didn't regret loving him. She regretted believing, for a moment, that she could stay, that she could rest, that someone could finally carry her without dropping her, and that if she fell, it wouldn't mean she was weak. It would mean she was loved. But trauma doesn't let you believe that easily, and Alina's trauma screamed louder than his touch ever could. Meanwhile, Sterling returned to routine. Board meetings, dinners, charity events. His smile returned. His presence sharpened. He was back to being the man everyone feared in negotiations. But his eyes were different. Hollow, quiet, distant. He didn't date, didn't bring anyone new around, didn't even look, because no one could unsay what she had said, or unleave the way she had left. He told himself he was fine, that maybe she just wasn't who he thought she was, that maybe she was never meant to stay, but deep down, he knew. She left, not because she didn't love him, she left because she did. One day, Flynn walked into his office and tossed a manila envelope on his desk. Charity feature in a local newsletter. Figured you'd want to see it. You gave them a matching grant 6 months ago. Sterling barely looked up. I get dozens of those. Not like this one. He opened the envelope. Inside was a folded newsletter printout. The headline read, "From Waitress to Warrior, How One Single Mother is Changing Lives for Women Like Her." His fingers froze. The woman at the podium in the picture. It was Alina. Hair shorter, shoulders stronger, smile brighter. But it was her, standing in front of a banner for a non-profit called HopeWorks, a hand in hers, a child by her side. Sterling stared at the girl. She was 4, maybe 5, brown skin, big eyes, his jawline. He didn't ask questions. He booked a flight. Charlotte, North Carolina, was quieter than he expected. The streets weren't crowded. The coffee shops were small. Everything moved slower. It made him feel impatient. He didn't want time to think. He wanted answers. He parked outside the community center, listed on the newsletter, and waited. Not because he was nervous, because he didn't want to scare her. He didn't want to storm into her world and throw everything off balance again. He had already done that once, by existing in her space when she wasn't ready. Now he would wait. She walked out around 3:15 p.m., wearing jeans and a pale blue blouse. Her hair was tied back in a small puff, her walk quick, determined, slightly worn. She still moved like she had somewhere to be, and then she saw him. Their eyes locked across the parking lot. She didn't speak. He didn't move. She stood still for several seconds, then slowly walked toward him. When she got close enough to hear his breathing, she said the only thing that made sense. "I wondered when—" He swallowed. "You knew I'd find you. I hoped you wouldn't." She said it without spite, just honesty. That hurt more than anger ever could. They didn't hug, didn't cry, didn't pretend. Instead, she said, "Come inside. There's an office." He followed. It smelled like crayons and lemon disinfectant. There were kid drawings on the walls and soft music playing faintly from a back room. She opened a small door, motioned to the chair, and closed it behind them. Sterling sat. Alina didn't. She stood by the window, letting the light hit her face. Finally, she turned. "I found out a week after I left." He blinked. "The baby?" She nodded once. "Her name is Hope." Sterling clenched his jaw. "You could have told me." "I could have," she said, "but I didn't know how to do that, and still stay whole." He sat back. "I never asked you to be alone. I didn't want to be a charity case, Sterling." The words landed like glass shattering. "You thought I'd see you like that?" "I thought—" She paused, voice trembling. I thought I'd lose myself in your world." Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. "I didn't want our daughter to grow up watching me shrink." He didn't argue, because the silence between them wasn't about blame. It was about 5 years of unspoken pain, and a little girl named Hope who had his chin. Sterling didn't sleep the night he saw Hope's photo. He sat in the hotel armchair, the newsletter folded beside him, the dim table lamp painting shadows across the carpet. He had built companies from nothing, negotiated contracts that shaped industries, walked into courtrooms without blinking, but nothing prepared him for the way that little girl's face had disarmed him. She had Alina's eyes, his jawline, and something in her smile that felt too familiar to deny. At 9:55 a.m. sharp, he parked near the park Alina mentioned. There was a playground in the distance, bright yellow slides, blue swings, creaking with laughter, chalk drawings fading on the sidewalk. Sterling didn't get out immediately. He just watched. 5 minutes later, Alina arrived. She wore jeans and a grey t-shirt tucked into her waistband, sunglasses, a tote bag over one shoulder. Holding her hand was a little girl in pink overalls and white sneakers with one untied lace. Hope. Sterling's chest tightened. He wasn't sure if it was nerves, guilt, or awe. Maybe all three. Alina spotted him before Hope did. She walked over slowly, her posture steady, her face unreadable. Hope tugged her hand. "Mama, is that him?" Alina crouched beside her. "Yes, baby." Hope's eyes widened. "Is he the one from the picture?" Alina nodded. Sterling took a deep breath and stepped forward. He crouched to meet her gaze. "Hi," he said, voice soft. Hope tilted her head. "Are you Mommy's friend?" Sterling smiled. "I hope to be." She studied him for a long second, then asked, "Do you build castles too?" He blinked. "I'm learning." She giggled. Alina stood behind her, arms folded, guarded. But she didn't interrupt, didn't pull Hope away, didn't shut him out. And for Sterling, that was enough. For now. Hope took him by the hand before he could stand up. "Come on. I saved the good shovel." He looked at Alina. She nodded once. So he followed. They sat in the sandpit for nearly 20 minutes. Hope talked non-stop about school, her friend Amari who didn't like cheese, and a dog named Crumbs who barked every time she walked by with her bike. Sterling didn't say much, but he listened. And Hope. She kept looking at him like she was trying to figure something out. "You look like me," she finally said, wiping sand from her palms. Sterling smiled gently. "I've been thinking the same thing." Alina watched from a nearby bench. She hadn't expected this to feel so strange, not bad, not angry, just strange, to see them together, to hear Hope's laugh bounce in a rhythm she hadn't heard before, to realize that maybe, for all her effort, she couldn't protect her daughter from everything. Some connections ran too deep. After a while, Sterling walked Hope back to her mother. She was holding a melted popsicle now, her fingers sticky, her smile stained red. "Can he come again, Mama?" Alina glanced at Sterling. He didn't speak, didn't push, just waited. Hope tugged her sleeve. "Please." Alina looked down, then nodded. "One more Saturday," she said softly. "We'll see." Hope beamed. Sterling didn't smile until they walked away. But when he did, it was the kind that reached his eyes. That evening, he stopped at a bookstore. He bought coloring books, soft pencils, and a children's encyclopedia about animals. Then he found a quiet cafe, pulled out his notebook, and wrote a short letter. "Hope, I don't know how to be the best at this, but I want to be someone you can count on. I'll be here every Saturday if you'll have me. Sterling." He slipped it into the bag with the books and dropped it off at the community center with a handwritten label for Hope, from the castle builder. He didn't expect a response. He didn't ask for one. But the next Saturday, when he showed up to the park, Hope ran to him with her backpack bouncing, the letter folded in her hand. She hadn't let it go all week. They made another sandcastle that day, bigger, stronger, and this time, Alina sat beside them, not close, but closer. Enough to hear Sterling say, "We need a moat." Enough to watch Hope look at him like she'd known him all her life. Enough to realize that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about her anymore. This was about the little girl between them, and what she deserved. Afterward, Alina pulled him aside. Hope ran ahead with another little girl toward the swings. Sterling waited. "I'm not making any promises," Alina said quietly. "I'm still not sure what this means." "I'm not asking for promises," he replied. "Only consistency." She blinked. "For her?" He looked her in the eye. "For both of you?" Alina's breath hitched, but she didn't answer. She just nodded again. That night, Sterling sat in his hotel room. He opened his laptop, closed the photo of Alina laughing, and replaced it with a new one, Hope, covered in sand, sticking her tongue out with her mother's smile. He stared at it for a long time, not because it hurt, but because it gave him something he hadn't felt in years, a reason to stay. Saturday became their rhythm. Sterling didn't miss a single one. Rain or shine, he showed up. Sometimes they built castles. Sometimes they played tag. Sometimes they just sat on the grass and read books, while Hope ate goldfish crackers from a Ziploc bag. He never showed up empty-handed, but he never came to impress. He brought things with thought: puzzle books, mini science kits, sketch pads, and, once, a box of dinosaur stickers that Hope plastered all over her notebook. Alina watched it all unfold like it wasn't real, because part of her still didn't trust it. People didn't stay. They showed up for a while, made promises in big gestures, then faded when things got hard. But Sterling, he was still there, week after week. No expectations, no demands, no drama, just presence. And that, more than anything, unraveled her. One Saturday, Hope scraped her knee after tripping on a slide step. She cried loudly, tears streaking down her dusty cheeks. Sterling picked her up without hesitation and sat with her on the bench. Alina rushed over, already pulling wipes from her purse. But Hope buried her face in Sterling's neck, sobbing into his collar. He didn't flinch. He just held her, whispering softly, "You're okay. I've got you. You're safe." Alina froze. Not because she doubted him, but because she had never seen Hope respond to anyone like that before. Not even her teachers, not even her sister, only her. And now, him. That night, Alina didn't sleep much. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, arms crossed over her chest. Memories played like a quiet reel. Sterling fixing her heater. Sterling sleeping in the armchair beside her instead of pushing for more. Sterling saying, "We fail together." And she, running, leaving, folding into her old self. But he didn't punish her for it. He didn't shame her. He just came back, not for an apology, not for control, but for love, for hope, for her. The next morning, she sent him a text. "Alina, we're making pancakes at noon. Hope says you're invited, if you want." His reply came 30 seconds later. "Sterling, I'll bring strawberries. And real maple syrup. I want." It wasn't a grand dinner. The apartment was small, and the table had a wobble. But the way Hope danced in her pajamas while the batter sizzled on the pan, it made the space feel sacred. Sterling helped flip pancakes while Alina brewed coffee. She moved around the kitchen, like she still wasn't used to anyone else being in it. But she didn't ask him to leave, and when she set 3 plates down instead of 2, he noticed. They ate together, laughing when Hope dropped a blueberry and blamed gravity. Sterling cleared the plates without being asked. And when Hope ran off to her room, Alina turned to him at the sink. "Why didn't you walk away?" He dried his hands on a towel. "Because you didn't ask me to." She studied him for a long moment, then said quietly, "I don't know how to believe you'll stay." He stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. "You don't have to believe it yet," he said. "You just have to let me show you." For the first time in years, Alina let herself hope. Not for promises, not for forever. Just for now. just for a man who didn't run when she was hard to love. That evening, after Hope went to bed, they sat on the couch in silence. Alina curled her legs beneath her. Sterling sipped warm tea she'd made, too sweet, but he didn't complain. He looked around the apartment. "It's different from your old place," he said softly. "On purpose," she replied. He waited. She continued, "I needed somewhere that didn't hold memories. Somewhere I could restart." He nodded. "Understandable." Then he looked at her. "But some memories are worth keeping." She didn't reply. She just leaned her head against his shoulder. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had to carry everything alone. 3 weeks later, he was still coming every Saturday. And one day when he showed up with takeout, Alina opened the door already barefoot. That's when he knew something had shifted. Not because she smiled, but because she didn't guard the space anymore. She let him in fully, and she didn't apologize for the mess, the toys, the unfolded laundry. She simply said, "We missed you." He didn't say anything back. He just set the bags on the counter, turned around, and kissed her forehead. Soft, slow, certain, no words needed. Later that night, Alina sat beside Hope, brushing her hair as she fell asleep. Hope yawned. "Will he come back tomorrow?" "No, baby. Next Saturday." Hope frowned. "I want him to stay." Alina's hand slowed. "Why?" "Because when he's here," she mumbled, already half asleep, "you smile different." Alina's throat tightened. She leaned down, kissed her daughter's temple, and whispered, "Maybe one day, baby. Maybe." When she returned to the living room, Sterling was standing near the window. She didn't speak. She just walked over, stood beside him, and watched the quiet street below. "I used to think showing up wasn't enough," she said. "That it was just something people said when they didn't know how to commit. And now? Now I think showing up is everything." He nodded once, then reached out and held her hand. She didn't pull away. Hope started calling him Sterl. No one taught her that. It just happened one Saturday when she was drawing under the picnic table, waving a purple marker in the air. "Sterl, do turtles cry?" He had blinked, caught off guard by both the question and the nickname. Alina laughed softly from a few feet away, her first real laugh in days. "Sterl, huh?" she teased. He didn't mind. In fact, he liked it, because it meant something had shifted. Hope wasn't just tolerating him. She was claiming him. By now, Sterling was spending more than just Saturdays with them. Some weekday evenings, too. Sometimes he brought over dinner. Sometimes he stayed late enough to help Hope with her alphabet workbook. Sometimes he sat on the couch with Alina. No words exchanged, just her leg resting gently against his. She still hadn't called it anything. They still hadn't defined what they were. But it was growing, unfolding. Not rushed, not dramatic, just honest. One Tuesday, Alina stood in the hallway after Hope fell asleep. Sterling leaned against the doorframe of the kitchen. She folded her arms across her chest. "I'm not used to this," she admitted. "This? People staying, showing up, without asking for something." Sterling's voice stayed low. "I'm not here to collect anything." She tilted her head. "Then why are you here?" He pushed off the frame and walked toward her slowly. "I'm here," he said, "because I see you, and that's enough for you." He nodded. It always was. That night, she let him stay. Not overnight, not like that, but long enough to sit together while she cried. She didn't explain why, didn't list all the wounds, didn't spell out the fear. She just wept quietly into his shoulder while the lights stayed low and the kettle stayed cold. He held her, didn't fill the silence, didn't offer clichés, just sat there, steady, present, real. The next morning, she made him eggs. He didn't say anything about the fact that she only had 2. He just ate them and said, "Best eggs I've ever had." She rolled her eyes but smiled. One afternoon, he brought her a gift. A small potted plant with a note. "For your windowsill, something else that deserves to grow slow." She stared at it for a long time before placing it in the kitchen window. She watered it every day, even when it didn't bloom, especially then. Still, there were days the fear returned, like the day Hope came home from school and said her classmate's dad lived in the same house as her mom. Hope had asked innocently, "Why doesn't Ster live here too?" Alina had frozen, not because she hadn't thought about it, but because she had. Too much. She tucked Hope into bed that night and stood in the doorway longer than usual. When she finally came out, Sterling was on the couch, scrolling through his phone. She sat beside him, cross-legged, arms folded. Hope asked, "Why you don't live here?" Sterling looked up, careful. "What did you say?" "I said nothing." He waited. She met his eyes. "I'm scared of needing you too much." His voice was calm. "I already need you." She swallowed hard. "That's what terrifies me." They didn't decide anything that night, but she let her head fall onto his chest. One Friday, Sterling brought over a photo album. Hope had been asking more questions lately, about where he lived, if he had pets, what he was like as a baby. He figured it was time to give her something. So they sat at the table, flipping through old pictures. Hope pointed at one where he was about 5, missing 2 front teeth and holding a soccer ball. "You were cute," she said. He laughed. "Were?" She giggled. "Okay, you still are, but you look funnier now." Alina bit her lip, holding in a laugh. Sterling looked at her, heart full. This was the life he didn't know he needed. Not the penthouse, not the panels or Forbes interviews. This, dinner, crumbs on the table, stick drawings on the fridge, tiny sneakers by the door. That weekend, he cancelled a conference trip. His assistant nearly panicked. But Sterling said simply, something more important came up, and when he told Alina, she just looked at him, unsure what to say. So he said it for her. "You matter more." She didn't argue, because maybe, for the first time, she believed it. The next Saturday, as they walked back from the park, Hope slipped her hand into both of theirs. A perfect little bridge between two people still learning how to love without fear. Alina looked up at Sterling, the late sun casting gold across his face. And she whispered, "You stayed." He nodded, squeezing her hand. "I always would have." The next few weeks unfolded like a life Alina had never allowed herself to imagine. Quiet mornings, shared grocery runs, Sterling helping Hope with school projects on the living room floor. Not perfect, not magical, but grounded, gentle, consistent. One Thursday night, after dinner, Hope sat cross-legged on the carpet with a shoebox in her lap. Inside were colored paper scraps, buttons, ribbon, and glitter glue. "What are you making?" Sterling asked, leaning over. "A memory box," Hope said proudly. "For what kind of memories?" "Good ones." Sterling smiled. "Can I help?" "Only if you don't mess it up," she warned with a serious face. He held up his hands. "I've been trained." Alina watched from the couch, arms wrapped around her knees. She didn't interrupt, just memorized the moment. Because moments like these used to feel like fantasies. Now they were normal. Later that night, after Hope had fallen asleep with glitter on her cheek, Sterling stayed behind to help clean up the kitchen. Alina stood at the sink, rinsing dishes. Sterling dried them, slow and focused. "She trusts you," Alina said softly. "She trusts us," he corrected. She looked over her shoulder. "Do you—" He paused. "I trust what I see, what I feel, what we're building." Alina's eyes dropped. "Sometimes I still expect to wake up and find everything gone." "I don't blame you," he said. "But I'm not leaving, Alina." "I know," she whispered. "I just don't know how to believe it every day." "You don't have to," he said. "That's what I'm here for. To help you remember." They didn't kiss that night. They didn't need to. The space between them was full of something stronger than desire. It was trust, real, earned, still growing. That weekend, they went to a community event at the center where Alina worked. There were games, food trucks, and a small talent show. Alina didn't like public attention, but her co-workers begged her to speak briefly. She agreed. nervous, eyes scanning the crowd. When she stepped on the platform, she froze for a split second, until she saw him, standing in the back, holding Hope's hand, smiling at her like she belonged up there. She breathed, then spoke, not about her accomplishments, not about her title, but about fear. Sometimes, she told the crowd, you don't start strong. Sometimes, you just start scared. But showing up again and again, that's where the power is. Her voice cracked. Sterling didn't move. Hope clapped first. Everyone followed. Afterward, Sterling didn't say anything. He just walked up, handed her a water bottle, and whispered, "That was brave." She nodded. "So was coming here. We're both doing brave things," he said. And then he kissed her. In public. Soft. Honest. No performance. Alina didn't flinch. She kissed him back. Because maybe it was time. Time to stop fearing peace. Time to stop apologizing for choosing softness. Time to love without retreating. Hope squealed when she saw them. "You kissed." Alina blushed. Sterling grinned. "Don't tell anyone." "I'm telling Amari," Hope shouted. Sterling chased her in circles through the grass, while Alina laughed until her sides hurt. That night, Alina stood in the kitchen as Sterling buttoned up his shirt to leave. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You don't have to go," she said. He stilled. "I mean it," she added. "If you want to stay, you can." Sterling met her gaze. "Are you sure?" She nodded slowly. "I'm not scared of needing you anymore," she whispered. "I just needed to believe you wouldn't run when I did." He walked to her, reached for her hand. "I never wanted to be your rescuer, Alina." She smiled. "You weren't." He leaned in, kissed her forehead. "I'm your witness." That night, for the first time in years, she slept beside someone and didn't wake up before sunrise. She stayed, so did he, and in the soft morning light, Hope tiptoed into the room, climbed onto the bed and whispered, "We should always stay like this." Alina opened her eyes, smiled and said, "We just might." Alina didn't expect peace to feel like this. Not loud, not overwhelming, but slow, deep, present. It was in the way Hope laughed more freely, in how the dishes sat in the sink a little longer because they were too busy playing Uno, in how Sterling didn't just show up. He stayed, not out of obligation, but out of love. Some mornings, he made breakfast before either of them woke up. Hope would come running out, rubbing her eyes, already sniffing for bacon. Alina would find him humming low, his sleeves rolled, flipping pancakes like it was the most natural thing in the world. She never said it out loud, but she watched him like she was memorizing the way he moved, like he belonged there. Because slowly, without force, he did. Alina had always done life on her own, fixed things herself, carried her sister through college, built her non-profit from scraps, held it together even when she was breaking. But Sterling made space for her to be human. He didn't interrupt her independence. He simply stood beside it, like a steady wall that let her lean sometimes, like someone who understood that strength and softness could live in the same body. One afternoon, she sat beside him at the park while Hope ran across the grass blowing bubbles. She sipped her iced tea and asked, "Do you regret not knowing about her sooner?" Sterling looked at her, calm. "I regret not being there. But I don't blame you. You should." "No," he said. "I should thank you." "For what?" "For protecting her. For raising her with so much love. For letting me be part of it now." Alina looked away, because it was too much. Too generous, too unlike anything she'd ever been told love should be. That night, while Hope colored in her room, Alina sat beside Sterling on the couch, legs stretched across his lap. "I still have hard days," she admitted. "I know. Sometimes I think you'll wake up and remember all the reasons I'm not enough." "I won't," he said. "You say that now." Sterling reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. "Do you want to know why I stayed that morning you left?" he asked. She nodded. "Because I knew what you did wasn't about me. It was about the war inside you. And I fought my own." She exhaled slowly. So, he added, I waited, not because I was weak, but because I knew your peace was worth the wait. The tears came before she could stop them, not sobs, not breakdowns, just slow, quiet tears of release. She leaned into his chest, and this time she didn't apologize. The next day, Hope brought home a drawing. It was 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small, all holding hands, big hearts on their chests. Her teacher had written in the corner, "Draw your family." Alina stared at it for a long time. Then she taped it to the fridge, right in the center. That weekend, Alina asked Sterling if he'd be willing to come to a parent-teacher day at Hope's school. He said yes before she finished the sentence. She hesitated. "You don't feel weird about that?" "I feel honored," he said. Hope beamed when she walked in between them that morning. Sterling held both their hands, and when one of the other parents leaned over and asked, "Is that her dad?" Alina answered softly, "Yes, he is." Sterling looked over, surprised, but he didn't question it. He simply squeezed her hand. That night, after Hope was asleep, they curled up on the couch with popcorn and a movie playing in the background. Alina reached for the remote and paused it halfway. She turned to him. "I need to ask something." "Okay. If we ever fall apart again, if I break or panic or forget how to stay, will you remind me of this?" He looked into her eyes, steady. "Every time." She let out a shaky breath. "I believe you." "You don't have to believe," he whispered. "Just trust me long enough to remind you." She nodded, and then she kissed him. This time, she didn't stop herself, didn't pull away, didn't wonder if she deserved it. She let herself want him, let herself feel everything, let herself stay. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window as Alina stood barefoot on the tiled floor, flipping pancakes while Hope sang off-key from the living room. Sterling walked in quietly, wearing one of the t-shirts she kept in the closet now just for him. He kissed the back of her neck before grabbing 2 mugs. "Coffee?" he asked. She handed him the sugar with a smirk. 3 spoons. "Don't pretend you're tough." He chuckled. "You're learning all my secrets." She looked at him over her shoulder. That was the plan. They sat at the table as Hope made a face at the healthy fruit Sterling added to her plate. "You're not the boss of the breakfast," she said, pouting. Alina raised an eyebrow. "Want a bet?" Sterling laughed as he peeled a banana and set it next to her pancakes. Hope crossed her arms. "You're lucky you're cute." Alina stifled a laugh behind her glass of orange juice. It was loud, it was messy, it was real, and it felt like home. Later that morning, Sterling helped Alina with dishes while Hope finished her cartoon marathon. "So," Alina said, passing him a damp plate, "do you still think about that morning?" He looked at her gently. "Every day." She paused. "I do too." He set the plate down and turned toward her. "But now," he said, "I think about this more." She smiled softly. "This? You? Her? Mornings that don't end with goodbye." Alina leaned against the counter. "You ever wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed?" "I don't need to," he said. "You're here now." That evening, Sterling had to return to Chicago briefly for business. Alina drove him to the airport. Hope sat in the back seat, chattering about a science project she was working on with a classmate named Marco. Sterling kept looking in the rearview mirror, as if memorizing her voice. When they pulled up to the curb, Alina parked and turned to him. "No pressure," she said. "But we'll miss you." He leaned over, kissed her forehead. "I'll be back Friday." "You sure?" "About that," he said, glancing at Hope. "And everything else." Hope hugged him tight. "Bring cookies." "Specific kind?" "Chocolate chunk, not chips." He grinned. "Got it." Alina watched him disappear through the sliding doors. And for the first time in years, her chest didn't tighten when someone she loved walked away, because she knew he'd return. The days passed quickly. Alina kept busy with work. Hope practiced her reading out loud every evening. They video-called Sterling every night before bed. Sometimes Hope told him knock-knock jokes. Sometimes Alina just stared at the screen, silently grateful. She hadn't planned for any of this. She hadn't asked for it. But now, she couldn't imagine going back. Friday came, and so did the sound of keys at the door just after 6 p.m. Hope ran barefoot down the hall. Sterling scooped her up mid-run and spun her around. Alina leaned against the doorframe, watching him. He looked at her as he set Hope down. "I kept my promise. You always do." She walked over, kissed him softly, then took the cookies from his hand. "Hope," she called. "You better hurry before I eat all these." Hope screamed, "No," and grabbed the box. Sterling watched them with a grin. This was the life he never saw coming, and the one he'd protect at all costs. Later that night, after Hope was asleep, Alina and Sterling sat on the couch. No TV, no music, just quiet and shared air. She turned to him slowly. "I used to think staying was weakness," she said. "And now I think it's the bravest thing I've ever done." He brushed his thumb along her knuckles. "I never thought I'd find this," he said. "Not after you left. I thought that door closed." She looked at him, eyes glassy. "But it didn't." He leaned in. "No," he whispered. "It stayed open. Because I never locked it." They didn't speak for a while after that. Didn't need to. Because when someone knows your deepest fears and chooses you anyway, that's the kind of love that doesn't need noise to be loud. It just is. The next morning, Alina woke to the smell of cinnamon rolls. She walked into the kitchen to find Hope licking icing off her fingers, while Sterling placed a tray on the table. Alina blinked. "Did I sleep in?" "You needed it," he said. She smiled, leaned into the doorway. Hope looked up and said, "Can we do this forever?" Alina glanced at Sterling. He reached for her hand. "We're already doing it." The kitchen was warm with the scent of cinnamon and morning chatter. Sterling sipped his coffee slowly, leaning on the counter, watching Alina help Hope zip up her hoodie. "You forgot your lunchbox," Alina said, pointing to the table. Hope groaned. "It's always the lunchbox." Sterling walked over, grabbed it, and handed it to her with a grin. "One day, you'll thank us." "Doubt it," she muttered, but she smiled anyway and hugged him around the waist. Alina watched them, chin resting on her hand, eyes soft. This had become their new normal. No more overthinking, no more doubt. Just mornings that made sense. Later that afternoon, while Hope was at a classmate's birthday party, Alina and Sterling sat at the park, sharing a bench under a tall tree. She pulled her legs up and rested her chin on her knees. "Do you remember that night?" she asked. He looked over. "Which one?" "The night I left." Sterling didn't flinch. Every detail. She turned her head toward him. "So do I." Silence settled for a moment. Then she said, "I didn't run because I stopped loving you." He waited. "I ran because I loved you so much. I couldn't stand the thought of losing myself again. I just started to find who I was outside of survival." Sterling nodded slowly. "I know," he said. Alina exhaled. "I didn't expect to get pregnant. I figured." "I found out a week later," she continued. "At first, I thought I wouldn't keep her." Sterling blinked. She didn't look at him. "I didn't know how to be a mom again. I thought it would swallow me whole. But then I remembered what you said." He leaned in. "You told me, you don't have to be perfect, just present." He swallowed. "And that's when I knew," she added. "If I could do one thing, I'd be there for her." Sterling looked at her, voice low. "Why the name Hope?" Alina smiled to herself. "Because that's what I was holding on to the night I left. Not a plan, not peace. Just hope that I wasn't broken beyond repair." She turned her face toward him again. "And when she was born, I knew that Hope had a face." Sterling didn't speak for a while. He just took her hand, squeezed it, and kissed her knuckles. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For choosing her, for naming her, for raising her, for letting her love me without even knowing why." Alina looked at him with wet eyes. "She loves you because she recognizes what's hers." That evening, after Hope was asleep, Alina brought out a small brown envelope. She handed it to Sterling. Inside was a faded photo. Hope at 2 years old, sitting on Alina's lap, both of them looking into the camera, no smiles, just tired, but together. "I kept this in my wallet for a long time," Alina said. "It reminded me why I had to keep going." Sterling traced his finger over the edge of the photo. "She looks like you. She acts like you," he chuckled softly. "I'm honored and terrified." Alina smiled. Then her expression sobered. "There's more," she said. Sterling looked up. "I wrote you a letter once," she said. "After she was born. I never sent it." She handed him another folded paper from the envelope. He unfolded it carefully. It was dated 3 weeks after Hope's birth. "Sterling, if you're reading this, I'm sorry, not for leaving, but for not knowing how to stay. I gave birth to a little girl. She has your chin, my eyes, and a name that reminds me every day that I still believe in light. I don't expect forgiveness, or even understanding, but I wanted you to know she's safe, and that you gave me something I never knew I needed, a reason to believe in softness again. I don't know if I'll ever see you again, but if I do, I hope you'll know her when you see her. Alina." He didn't say anything when he finished reading, just folded the letter back and set it gently on the table. Then he pulled Alina into a long, steady hug. No questions, no blame, only gratitude. The next Saturday morning, Hope woke up early. She ran into the bedroom, flinging the door open with excitement. "Are we still going to the zoo?" Sterling sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You're already dressed." She spun around dramatically. "I've been awake since forever." Alina peeked out from the hallway, toothbrush in hand. "That's not true. You were snoring 20 minutes ago." Hope gasped. "You heard that?" Sterling chuckled. "The neighbors probably heard it." Hope squealed, then dashed off to grab her backpack. Alina walked into the room and sat at the edge of the bed. Her hair was still tied in a silk scarf. Her eyes were tired, but peaceful. "She's been talking about this trip all week." Sterling reached for her hand. "Then let's make it special." The zoo was crowded, loud, and exactly what Hope needed. She pulled Sterling by the hand from one exhibit to the next, barely pausing for breath. At one point, while they watched the elephants, she climbed onto the bench beside him and leaned against his arm. "She tells her classmates, 'You're her dad now,'" Alina said, standing a few feet behind them. Sterling looked up, surprised. "She just started saying it on her own," Alina added. "No prompting." He turned toward Hope. "Does that feel okay to you?" Hope shrugged. "You feel like one." "That's all." Alina smiled quietly, heart full. Later, while Hope played near the carousel, Sterling and Alina sat on a shaded bench nearby, sharing a bag of trail mix and a bottled water. "I know what it means now," Sterling said. Alina looked at him. "When you named her Hope, when you chose not to tell me back then," he looked down at his hands. "You weren't punishing me. You were protecting her." Alina didn't speak. Sterling turned to her. "And maybe protecting yourself too." She nodded once. "I didn't want her to grow up waiting on someone who never came back." He whispered, "But I would have." "I know that now," she said. Hope ran back to them, carousel ticket waving in her hand. "Let's go. It's starting." Sterling stood and reached for her hand. "Let's ride a lion." "I'm riding the giraffe," she said proudly. He smiled. "Of course." Alina followed behind, watching the two of them mount the carousel like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was. Maybe this was how family was built. Not with paperwork or biology, but with presence, with time, with patience, with love. That night, as they drove home, Hope fell asleep in the back seat. Alina watched her in the rearview mirror and turned to Sterling. "I want to add you to her emergency contact forms." Sterling didn't respond at first, just glanced at her, eyes searching. "I mean it," she added. He nodded slowly. "I'd be honored. And..." She hesitated. "I think she'd want you to pick her up from school one day next week." Sterling smiled. "Say no more." Alina exhaled. "I'm learning to let you in. I just want to do it right. You already are. The next day, Hope wrote a card at the dining table, folded construction paper, crayon hearts, and a hand-drawn castle. On the front, in crooked handwriting, it read, "To the best dad builder." Inside, "Thank you for building castles and pancakes, for making Mama smile, and for not missing Saturdays. I love you more than giraffes and cupcakes. Love, Hope." Sterling folded it carefully and tucked it into his wallet behind his business card. "I'm never taking this out," he told her. Hope grinned. "Even if I give you a better one later." Especially then. That evening, Alina brought out a small box from her closet. "I kept a few things," she said. Inside were Hope's baby shoes, her hospital wristband, and a worn-down notebook Alina had used as a journal the first year. Sterling flipped through it slowly. There were entries about teething, night feedings, panic attacks, joy, and then he reached the back page. One line was written in darker ink than the others. "If he ever comes back, tell him she smiled just like him today." Sterling looked up, eyes damp. Alina didn't say anything. She didn't need to. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead, then whispered, "Thank you for letting me be her father now." Alina nodded into his chest. "You were never just a mistake I had to forget," she said. "You were the moment that changed everything." What if the person your child loved most was the one you almost never gave a chance? Have you ever seen a child bring two grown people back together without saying a word? This wasn't about perfect timing. It was about consistent effort, about showing up, especially when it mattered most. Tell us in the comments, who showed up for you when you needed them most? Or, who are you showing up for now? Tap like if you believe fatherhood is more than blood. Hit subscribe to keep walking this emotional road with us. Leave a comment if Hope reminded you of a little light in your own life. Because sometimes the greatest gift isn't a second chance. It's finally being ready when it comes. The box was smaller than Sterling expected, worn, a little dusty, tied with a thin red ribbon, frayed at the edges. It sat quietly at the bottom of Alina's old dresser drawer, uncovered by accident as he helped their daughter Mia pack her mother's things for a move she didn't want to make. "This was hers, right?" Mia asked softly, brushing dust from the top. Sterling nodded. He recognized the handwriting, his name, written in Alina's smooth, curved script. He reached for it slowly, hands trembling, heart unsure. Inside were letters, dozens of them, each one addressed to him. None of them sent. 2013. "Sterling, if you're reading this, then I failed. I meant to tell you, face to face. But fear wins more often than courage does, doesn't it? I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I didn't think I could survive staying. Love, Alina." His fingers tightened around the paper. He read another, and then another, and another. Each letter peeled back a layer of the truth he never had the guts to chase after when she vanished. She'd written about the nights she couldn't sleep, how his silence broke her more than any argument could, about her confusion when his mother suddenly began visiting the office, and why those visits stopped once Alina appeared. One letter spoke about the time Alina overheard a call, Sterling's voice, cold, detached. "I told you she's temporary. Once things calm down, I'll deal with it." Alina never told him she'd heard that, but she wrote it. "I knew I wasn't crazy, Sterling. I heard it. I wish I didn't. But that moment changed everything for me. I didn't want to be the woman waiting to be dealt with." He didn't remember saying those exact words, but the context, he could imagine saying it to a board member who kept pressing him about. A hostile merger, while he tried to protect Alina's reputation. He had tried to downplay her involvement, not her worth, but the chaos surrounding her pregnancy. But he never explained that, because he never knew she heard, and she never asked. She ran. He read until his eyes blurred. Every page a quiet scream, letters filled with love, confusion, betrayal, and deep sadness. And then, suddenly, hope. 2015. "Sterling, I watched our daughter take her first steps today. She looks like you when she falls, dignified, proud, and slightly annoyed that gravity exists. I thought about you, not in anger, not with bitterness, just curiosity. Would you have caught her? Or would you have stood back, the way you always did when I needed words and you only gave silence? I'm trying not to judge you anymore, but it's hard. Because I loved you so deeply, I lost myself. Sterling felt the air thin. His vision narrowed. He pressed the paper to his chest and closed his eyes. He had been so buried in his own bitterness for being left that he never imagined Alina carried this much pain herself. Dad? Mia's voice brought him back. He folded the letters gently, placing them back in the box. You okay? She asked. Sterling turned, eyes red. She wrote me letters, he said, voice rough. Mia blinked. She never mailed anything. I know. She never meant me to see them. Or maybe she hoped one day I would. They drove home in silence. Sterling held the box on his lap the entire way. When he got to his condo, he didn't pour whiskey or sit in the dark. He placed the box on his desk and picked up his phone. His fingers hovered. There was no number for Alina to call, but there was Mia. He texted her, "Do you think your mom would be open to seeing me?" The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. I think she already sees you. In me. Every day. He stared at that message, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man abandoned. He felt like a man who'd wasted time standing at the wrong door, never checking if the one he locked still had the key inside. At 3 a.m., he woke up to another message. From Mia. She never stopped loving you, you know? Sterling replied, I'm not sure I deserve her. Mia's response came instantly. That's not your decision to make. The next morning, Sterling returned to Alina's old neighborhood, not as the billionaire with polished shoes and a guarded jawline, but as the man with a box of letters and hope. And finally, humility. He walked up the porch and knocked, not expecting redemption, just ready to listen. Sterling stood by the window of the hotel room, arms folded, jaw tense. Outside, Charlotte's skyline was peaceful, too peaceful for the storm in his chest. His flight back to Chicago was scheduled for Sunday night, but now he wasn't sure he wanted to leave. Not yet. On the dresser lay the letter Alina had written, one she never meant for him to read. The words haunted him. I wanted to believe in us, but I didn't believe in myself enough to stay. He rubbed his face with both hands, sighing deeply. He'd built companies, bought out competitors, handled billion-dollar meetings without blinking, but nothing in his world prepared him for that sentence. It wasn't hate. It wasn't blame. It was fear. Real, human fear. And for the first time in years, he felt it too. That afternoon, Alina sat on the same park bench where they'd met a few days earlier. The air was crisp. Her scarf pulled tight. She watched Mia swing, her giggles rising like music through the trees. Sterling appeared quietly, coffee in hand. She looked up. You didn't text, she said. I wasn't sure you'd want me to. I wasn't sure either, she replied honestly. He handed her the coffee. She took it. They sat in silence for a few moments, just the sound of children laughing in the distance and wind rustling through dying leaves. Sterling finally spoke. I read the letter. Alina didn't flinch. She nodded once, eyes forward. You weren't supposed to. I know, but I'm glad I did. She turned to him. Why? Because I finally heard you. Not what I thought you meant, not what I wanted you to mean. Just you. Alina looked down at her lap, fingers tightening around the cup. It was never about you being unworthy. It was about me being too afraid to lose myself in someone else's life again. I get that now, he said. I didn't then. I thought love was showing up with solutions, fixing things, making everything better. You were good at that. I was terrible at seeing your silence for what it was. She smiled softly. You weren't terrible. You were just loud. They both laughed. Sterling looked at Mia. She's perfect. She's strong. She gets that from you. Alina shook her head. She gets that from being in a world where her mom didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Sterling's throat tightened. You shouldn't have had to do that alone. I didn't want to be dependent. I never wanted you to be dependent. I wanted you to feel safe. Alina looked at him carefully. Safe doesn't mean silence, or sacrificing my voice. I needed to learn that on my own. I wish I had made more room for your voice, even if it said no. Alina took a deep breath, nodding. You're saying all the right things now. Too late? She stared at the horizon. I don't know. But not too early either. Mia ran toward them then, holding a small stick with a yellow leaf stuck to the top like a flag. Look, Mummy. Sterling turned toward her and opened his arms instinctively. She paused, looked at her mother, and Alina gave her a tiny nod. Mia climbed up onto the bench and snuggled between them, leaf in hand. Mr. Sterling, do you live in this park? He smiled. No. But it's starting to feel like home. Alina smiled too, watching her daughter, so open, so curious, so hers. Sterling looked at her. I'm not here to rewrite the past, Alina. I'm here to show up in whatever future you'll let me be part of. Alina didn't respond with words. She just rested her hand near his on the bench. Close, but not touching. That night, after Mia was asleep, Alina sat on her porch wrapped in a blanket, the baby monitor beside her. Sterling walked up the steps slowly. You're still here? She asked, surprised. I didn't want the day to end like that. Like what? Like almost. She raised a brow. He sat beside her, almost holding your hand, almost saying what I meant, almost walking away again. I'm not asking you to stay. I know, he said, but I'm asking you to let me come back. To the porch? To your life. She looked at him in the dim light. I need consistency. For me. For her. I'll be consistent. Not perfect, but steady. Alina looked ahead. The street was quiet. A dog barked somewhere down the road. A neighbor's porch light flickered. Finally, she whispered, I don't trust fast anymore. I don't want fast. I want real. They sat quietly again. Her shoulder brushed his. I still wake early, he said, breaking the silence. I know, she smiled. I think about that morning all the time. I used to, she said. Until she was born. He looked at her. She became the morning, Alina added. And you stayed the memory. Sterling reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded photo. It was the one of her laughing at the diner, the one he'd saved for years. I kept this, he said, when I couldn't sleep, when the business got too loud. This reminded me of something worth being quiet for. Alina's fingers trembled as she held the photo. I hated myself for loving you too much, she said. Sterling shook his head. Don't say that. I didn't know how to hold on to me and us at the same time. You don't have to choose anymore. She looked at him again, long and hard. I'm not the same girl who left before sunrise, and I'm not the man who let her go. A light breeze passed between them, like a quiet agreement neither of them dared say aloud. Inside, Mia stirred once in her sleep. Outside, two hearts began to relearn how to beat in sync, this time without noise, without pressure, without fear, just presence. Sunday morning came with the sound of pancakes sizzling in the kitchen and Mia singing off-key to a cartoon theme song. Alina wore her robe, barefoot, with her hair in a lazy bun. Her house felt warmer than it had in years, not because of the temperature, because of the presence. Sterling was at the stove. He had rolled up his sleeves and was focused on flipping a pancake without messing it up. Mia sat at the table, her legs swinging as she watched him with the curiosity only children carried. You're not bad for someone who owns 3 penthouses, Alina said from the doorway. Sterling smiled over his shoulder. Burned the first batch, but we don't talk about that. Mia giggled. He dropped one on the floor. Sterling put a finger to his lips. That's our little secret. Alina walked in and poured herself some coffee. She watched him, completely out of his element, yet right at home. Her heart softened again, which was happening far too often lately. After breakfast, the 3 of them went for a walk. The small trail behind Alina's house led to a quiet nature reserve. Mia raced ahead, chasing butterflies, while Sterling and Alina trailed slowly behind. "You ever think about moving back to Chicago?" he asked gently. Alina kept her eyes on the trees. "Sometimes. But this place, it gave me peace." Sterling nodded. "I get that, but I also think it gave you distance from the life we had. From me." She glanced at him. "I needed that distance." He didn't argue. "And now, I don't know," she said truthfully. "You showing up like this, making pancakes, showing up at parks, saying all the right things, it's overwhelming. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm trying to be available." "I'm not used to that," she said quietly. Sterling slowed his steps. "Alina, I didn't come here to win you back in a weekend. I came to tell the truth. For once, you deserved that years ago." She stopped walking. "I believed you loved me, Sterling. I just didn't believe love was enough to keep me safe." He stepped in front of her. "And I made you feel that way. I know that. I know I dismissed your fears, pushed too hard, listened too little. I was in love with a version of us that didn't have room for your reality." She blinked back tears. "I didn't want to feel small." "You were never small," he said. "I was just too big for the room." That made her laugh. An honest, low laugh that curled at the edge of her mouth. They walked in silence a bit more. Then Mia came racing back, waving a stick like a wand. "I found a fairy house." Sterling took the stick from her. "You sure it's not a troll's house?" "Daddy!" she shrieked. Alina froze. Sterling's eyes widened too. Mia looked between them. "Is that okay? I can call him something else." Sterling bent down immediately. "Mia, you can call me whatever feels right in your heart. I'd be lucky to be called anything by you." She nodded and hugged him tightly. Alina watched the two of them, her daughter clinging to a man who had once been a ghost in her life. And that man, holding her like he was afraid to blink. That night, Sterling didn't go back to the hotel. Alina offered him the guest room. "I trust you not to push," she said. "And I trust you to tell me when to leave," he answered. After tucking Mia in, Alina found him sitting on the porch again. No wine, no tension, just the quiet hum of evening air and a space between them that was slowly closing. "You know what I regret most?" Sterling said softly. She looked over. "That I never asked you how you felt about becoming a mother. I assumed. I celebrated. I made plans. But I never asked how you felt about it." Alina's eyes glossed. "I was terrified. I should have known. I didn't even know how to say it. I wouldn't have heard you anyway. I was already buying baby furniture and talking about private schools." She laughed. "You were on a fast train. I left you on the platform," he said. "And I got off before I lost myself completely." They sat in stillness. The moon hung low. The porch light flickered gently. Sterling finally whispered, "Do you think there's still an us in here somewhere?" Alina didn't answer quickly. "I think," she said slowly, "there's still something sacred between us. But it needs time, and space, and choice, not pressure." Sterling nodded. "Then I'll wait, not passively, but respectfully." Alina reached over. This time, she did touch his hand. Her fingers were soft and steady. "Then let's start with the truth. No more letters. No more silence." He squeezed her hand gently. "Deal." And for the first time since she left before sunrise, Alina didn't feel like she had to run before morning came. She wanted to stay, not because he asked, because this time she was ready. Dinner ended with quiet laughter, and Hope's voice singing off-key as she cleaned up her crayons. Sterling watched from the doorway, arms folded, as Alina wiped down the counter. She moved with ease, but he could tell her thoughts weren't settled. "Everything okay?" he asked. She didn't look up. "You ever feel like peace is too quiet?" Sterling stepped inside. "I used to. Then I realized peace is quiet for a reason. It lets you hear what matters." Alina finally glanced at him, her face tired, her eyes searching. "I'm still getting used to all of this," she admitted. "You. The idea of you being here, of Hope knowing you, of me trusting this again." Sterling didn't rush to respond. He walked to the sink grabbed a dish towel and started drying the clean plates. Quietly, intentionally. "I'm not here to make you forget what happened," he said. "But I am here to build something better from it." Alina leaned against the counter. "She asks about you every night now. Wonders what book you'll bring, what story you'll tell. I've got a new one for tomorrow. The one about the dragon who couldn't roar," he said with a small grin. Alina smiled back. "You know she pretends to be brave, right? Like you—" He paused. "You think I'm pretending? I think you've always been trying, even when I didn't see it." They stood in that silence, closer than they'd allowed in a while. The house smelled like garlic bread and crayons, the kind of place where love didn't have to shout to be heard. "I wanted to ask you something," Alina said suddenly, her voice cautious. Sterling nodded. "Go ahead. Why didn't you ever try to find me before now?" He met her gaze directly. "Because I didn't think I deserved to." She blinked. "I thought maybe I was something you needed to leave behind to grow, and I didn't want to show up and pull you back." Alina folded her arms, her voice lower now. "I wasn't trying to grow without you. I was trying to protect what I had left of myself. I know that now." Her eyes softened, and she took a slow breath. "Hope's going on a field trip next weekend. She wants you to come." Sterling didn't hesitate. "I'll be there. I'll drive." She said she wants her friend with the books to meet her class. He chuckled. "I'll wear my best cool dad look." Alina tilted her head. "You already have it." They shared a look that didn't need translation, a quiet confirmation that some bridges, no matter how long abandoned, were still standing. The next day, Sterling showed up to the daycare early. Hope ran into his arms like it had been a week instead of a night. "You're not late," she yelled, hanging from his neck. "Because I didn't want to miss your trip." He smiled. Her classmates eyed him with curiosity, especially when he bent down to tie a kid's shoelace or handed out napkins without being asked. The teachers loved him instantly. By noon, he had kids surrounding him as he read a story about space explorers and glittering moons. Alina watched from a distance, her heart catching in her throat. He wasn't playing a part. He wasn't putting on a show. He was being present, and presence, she realized, had always been what she feared the most, because it meant being seen, fully. After the trip, Sterling didn't leave right away. He helped pack up the supplies, folded blankets, and even scrubbed paint off a toddler's shoe. Alina walked him to the car. "You could have had someone do that," she said. "I wanted to do it myself." She looked up at him. "I can't tell if you're proving a point or just being who you are now." Sterling stepped closer. "Does it scare you either way?" "No," she said, "but it's going to take time." "I've got time." They stood inches apart, the afternoon sun casting shadows behind them. Sterling reached into his back seat and handed her a small wrapped package. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it later." "Not now." She eyed him, but took it. Then he leaned in, not for a kiss, but just close enough to feel her breath. "I'm not rushing you, Alina, but I'm not walking away again." She watched him drive off. When she got home, Hope ran inside and jumped onto the couch. Alina sat down at the dining table, unwrapped the gift slowly. It was a leather-bound journal. Inside, on the first page, Sterling had written, "For the things you didn't say then, and the ones you're still holding now. No judgment, no expectations, just space." Alina pressed her hand over her heart. He didn't want apologies. He wanted connection, and maybe, just maybe, she was ready to give it. Later that week, Hope had a cold. Nothing serious, just enough to knock her energy down. Sterling brought over soup without being asked. He sat on the floor while Hope watched cartoons. Alina stood in the doorway, arms folded. "You always this prepared?" she asked. "I've had years to think about what I'd do if I got the chance." She nodded slowly. "Well, you're doing okay. Just okay." Alina smirked. "Don't push it." That night, as Sterling tucked Hope into bed, she looked up at him. "You're staying for pancakes tomorrow, right?" Sterling hesitated, looked toward Alina. She nodded once. Yes, he said. I'll be here. The next morning, Hope danced barefoot on the kitchen tiles while Alina flipped pancakes. Sterling sipped coffee and watched her move. You always this graceful when you cook? He asked. I'm a mother. We make beauty out of mess. He reached for her hand. You've made something beautiful here, Alina, and I want to protect it. Be part of it. She looked up at him. Even if it means moving slow, I'm not in a rush. I just don't want to miss another sunrise. This time, when they kissed, it wasn't desperate or loud. It was gentle, sure, honest. And as Hope squealed from the living room, waving a pancake like a flag, Alina smiled against Sterling's mouth. She hadn't lost herself. She had found something bigger. And this time, she was ready to stay. The morning was unusually quiet. Sterling sat at the dining table, elbows resting on the polished edge, staring at the steam rising from his untouched coffee. Across from him, Alina gently spooned applesauce into Mila's mouth while humming softly under her breath. 3 weeks had passed since the DNA results. 3 weeks of slow steps forward. 3 weeks of Sterling trying to become the father he never knew how to be. And Alina watching carefully, silently, waiting to see if it would last. Do you want me to take her to daycare today? Sterling asked, his voice low. Alina looked up, surprised. You have meetings, she said. I moved them. She didn't respond right away, but there was something in her eyes, like she was seeing a version of him she didn't recognize yet, maybe even believed in. You sure? She asked. He nodded. I want to take her, Mila giggled, clapping her hands. Applesauce smeared across her cheeks. Sterling smiled at her, then at Alina. It was still strange to think this little girl was his, but it wasn't the biology that stunned him anymore. It was the way she looked at him, like he mattered. And for the first time in years, he wanted to be someone who deserved that. By 10 a.m., he was at a nearby preschool, watching Mila run around the soft turf yard while holding hands with a boy in a dinosaur t-shirt. She's adjusted well, the teacher told him, smiling. She's bright, observant, and kind. Sterling swallowed a lump in his throat. Kind. Alina had raised her to be kind. He sat on a bench after drop-off, pulling out his phone and hesitating before typing. You up for a walk later? Just you and me? Alina's response came quickly. Where? The trail by Glenridge Park. 3 p.m.? Okay. He exhaled, then tucked the phone away. This was his moment. Not to impress her, not to fix everything, but to listen. When Alina met him at the trailhead, she wore leggings, a zipped hoodie, and a cap pulled low over her braids. Sterling had never seen her like this. Simple, unbothered, at peace. Nice choice, she said, taking a sip from her water bottle. You never used to walk. I didn't know what I was missing, he said quietly. They started down the gravel path, side by side, their steps falling into a natural rhythm. For a while, neither said a word. Birds chirped in the canopy above them, and a breeze rustled the yellowing leaves. Finally, Sterling cleared his throat. I didn't just push you away, Alina, he said. I erased you. Pretended none of it ever happened. I didn't let myself feel it. She kept walking, but her silence gave him room to continue. And then you were gone. And I told myself you left because you were angry, or needed space, or that you were being dramatic. She stopped walking. He stopped too. But the truth is, he turned to face her. I didn't give you anything to stay for. Alina looked at him, her eyes tired, but steady. You gave me every reason to leave, she said. I was carrying your child, and I walked away alone, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. He blinked hard, the emotion hitting fast. Every ultrasound, every appointment, every time I was scared she might not make it. I did that alone, Sterling. Her voice cracked on the last word. I couldn't trust you with her, because I couldn't trust you with me. He looked down, jaw clenched. I deserved that, he murmured. Alina shook her head. I'm not here for apologies, or to make you feel guilty. I said yes to this walk because I needed to say some things out loud. She paused. I still love you. His eyes flew to hers. But I don't trust you yet, and love without trust is a trap I won't fall into again. They finished the trail quietly, both lost in thought. By the time they returned to their cars, the sun had dipped lower, casting golden shadows through the trees. Sterling walked her to her door. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight," he said, "but if you'll let me, I'll earn my way back into your life. One day at a time." Alina stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. "One day at a time," she said softly. He turned to leave, but stopped when she called out. "She asked about your last name," Alina said. "If she should keep using mine." Sterling turned back, stunned. "What did you say?" "I told her we'd talk about it." His heart ached with hope. That night, he lay awake replaying everything she said. The silence, the honesty, the pain in her voice, and the love still hanging between them, careful and bruised, but real. Alina sat on the couch, flipping through Mila's baby book. Photos from her first birthday, her first words, her first scraped knee. There were so many moments Sterling had missed. But he was trying now, and that mattered more than she expected it to. The woman she was years ago. The one who stayed quiet, let love walk, all over her, and carried the weight of it alone. She was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned boundaries, and patience, and how to love without losing herself. Later that evening, her phone rang. "Hey, Mama," Alina answered. "I saw the pictures. Him walking Mila into school. You sure about this?" Alina smiled faintly. "No, but I'm willing to find out." Her mother sighed. "He's got a lot to prove." "He knows," Alina said. "Then, let him." Sterling stood at his window, hands in his pockets, staring out over the city skyline. His assistant buzzed through. "Mr. Lennox is online too." Sterling didn't move. He was supposed to sign the merger papers this week, but none of it felt urgent anymore. He turned back to his desk and picked up a photo of Mila, her face wide with laughter at a park swing. For the first time in his life, he had something worth more than all the contracts in his office, and he wasn't going to lose it again. The room was quiet. No echoes, no apologies left to be said. Callum sat still, his hands clasped tightly between his knees, staring at the floor. Alina stood by the window, her back to him, fingers trembling against the cool glass. She hadn't planned to tell him everything. Not tonight. But when he dropped to his knees at her feet and whispered, "I can, fix what I don't understand," something in her cracked wide open. "I left before sunrise," she began, voice low, "because the woman you loved didn't exist anymore." Callum slowly lifted his gaze. "What do you mean?" Alina didn't turn around. She needed distance. She needed the strength to finally say it without watering it down. "I was pregnant," she said, voice steady. "And I was scared, not of being a mother, not of starting over. I was scared of being invisible in your world." Silence. "I was scared of the board meetings I'd wait outside of, the nights I'd eat alone, the holidays I'd spend with your secretary coordinating your travel instead of you calling to say you'd be home late." His chest tightened. "Alina, no. You asked." She turned now, her eyes meeting his. "I felt like I'd vanish in your shadow. And when I told you I missed you, your exact words were, 'You knew what this life would be.'" She paused. "That night, I packed my things." He blinked hard. "You didn't give me a chance." "I did. Over and over. Until I couldn't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore." Tears brimmed in her eyes. "So I left, before sunrise, while you were still in bed. Because if I waited for you to wake up, I might have stayed." Callum stood now, quietly, slowly, his movements uncertain, like he didn't want to spook the moment. "And the baby? She didn't make it." Those 3 words knocked the air out of him. "I lost her at 10 weeks. No one knew except my sister. I didn't want your pity. I didn't want to be a charity case for a man who had already emotionally checked out." Callum took a shaky step forward. "Alina, I didn't know." She shook her head. "You didn't ask." That silence between them now wasn't awkward. It was heavy, necessary, The kind of silence that exposes everything you've buried. I was grieving two things, she whispered. The child I never held, and the love I thought was real. He sat again, this time beside her, not touching, not rushing, just present. I see it now, Callum said. Everything you felt. Everything I missed. I was chasing the next deal, the next title, not realizing I already had everything I needed. Alina didn't respond. She let the moment breathe. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, but I need you to know I'm not the same man you left. A pause. Then softly, I know. That surprised him. I've been watching, she admitted. How you handled the news about your dad. How you showed up for people instead of hiding behind work. I've seen your name attached to community clinics and mentorship grants. His eyes flickered. You've been watching? Of course. Just because I left doesn't mean I stopped caring. Callum looked down at his hands. I've always loved you, but now, I think I finally know how to love you right. Alina's eyes softened. She sat beside him, close but not too close. I don't need grand gestures, she said. I need consistency. I need peace. Callum nodded. And I'm ready to build that. She looked at him. Really looked. I'm not saying yes. Not yet. He smiled. I'll wait. Sunrise or not. They both laughed, the tension finally breaking. For the first time in years, there was light in their silence. Not pain, not guilt, just hope. If you felt that ending deep in your chest, then this story was for you. Don't forget to hit like if Alina's courage moved you. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories to never miss another love story that heals and teaches. Share this video with someone who knows what it means to choose peace over pain. And drop a comment below. Would you give someone a second chance after they missed your first cry for help? See you in the next story. You're not alone. You're growing, and we're growing with you.